Study of the Persian Bayán. This is a second session we've gone through now. We are going on to our second session. We had an intro, which we welcome you all to watch. It was on Sunday and Clearwater Baha'i session. And we had an intro last Wednesday as the beginning of this course on Wednesdays. And now we're beginning on the next step after we've discussed the thesis that Peter has written. I'm going to introduce Peter and he will take it from here. So the introduction, it's very simple. Peter Terry has been studying the writings of the Báb for 50 years, and he is thrilled to have this opportunity to accompany a group of readers of the mother book of the Bábí Revelation. We will all learn a great deal about the history of the faith in this reading, and we will also learn much about what the future holds. This is because so many of the laws of the Persian Bayán have been included in the Kitab al-Aqdas, the mother book of the Baha'i Dispensation, which along with other writings and spiritual writings, that is of Baha'u'llah, it will overshadow at least the next 500,000 years of human development, that is 500,000 years. Peter Terry is an author, translator, classical singer, and I do mind you definitely check it out on YouTube, Peter Terry opera or something along those lines. Classical singer, as I mentioned, manager and educator. He's lived on both coasts and in the middle and abroad as well. He is father of 2 adorable girls, and he is a husband to a marvelous wife, all of whom bring genes from Madagascar, the big cigar off the coast of Africa. He requested a short introduction, which I have given, and without further ado, here he is. So Peter, if you'd like to unmute.
Hello, everyone. Are there any newcomers? Are there any newcomers who would like to introduce themselves, perhaps? And if you're shy, that's okay. You don't have to introduce yourself. But I'm just curious to see about how many people, well, just think about this yourself, had the opportunity to read through this rather long paper of mine, which is, I think is about 60 pages, which was called the Thematic Analysis and Synopsis, or I guess it's not synopsis. What term did I use? Summary. Yes, summary of the Persian Bayán. Now, the reason why I had asked that everybody, or everybody who had the time to peruse that document, is that you're going to be covering so much material, so many ideas, that it's very easy to get lost. And I thought that it would be useful to have sort of a map that you can go to. You can go back to it. You don't have to just read it once and forget it. But that's why we made it available to everybody in document form, so you can write on it, circle things, underline things, do whatever process is going to work for you to be able to create sort of an anchor, sort of an outline for this magnificent book, which is so full of hidden meanings that I've only identified major themes that popped out at me, and I will be delighted to find that there are other themes that you'll discover that I didn't number among the most important. So that being said, I really think that the most useful thing we can do this time around, because that document was really an overview document, is to invite people to make any comments that you wanted to make or ask any questions, and use our time together today to consider those questions. Next week, we will have all done our first reading assignment of the text itself. And so we can approach it in perhaps more of a rigorous manner than today. But today, because you had the opportunity to see the overview of the entire book, I think it's better that I get my cue from you about what clarifications, what questions you have. I think you'll lead today's session. So John is going to see when you raise a hand or there's some sort of a queue system he's got together. And so he'll let you in, or he'll take messages from you. I think he's also getting texts from people. Am I right, John?
Well, we had a raised hand, reflective consultation, when you had asked earlier. He was patiently waiting to answer. Would you like to? I don't know your name, ma'am. If you could.
Yeah, sorry. My name is Kirk.
Sure.
I can't seem to be able to change my name. I thought I could do that once upon a time. I could change my name, but I don't seem to be able to do that anymore. So I surrender.
You can do it now, Kirk. My apologies. Go
Can
ahead.
I change my name?
Yeah, you can do it now.
Oh. Oh, well, I can edit the profile. Oh, there it is. Rename. Yeah, good.
Okay. So
wonderful.
are you going to adopt a Bábí name now?
I wouldn't know what a Bábí name would be, so no. Anyway, there. That's a little. Recon is short for reflective consultation. So I just learned about this from one of the people present here, Don Jensen Nobile. And so I've had about an hour and a half.
Yes.
But I did find one interesting thing. My focus, I don't know your email yet. Hopefully that'll appear somewhere. I don't know where to find that. So I'll be happy to email you once I have an email address to send. But perhaps that can be posted in the chat. But I did find in your assessment on page 14 under Vahid 2, Báb 4, it says the first line of that is the fourth Báb is concerned with the explanation of those letters which are, forgive me the pronunciation, Ilian maybe, and those which are not. Ilian.
Yes. Yes.
And my big interest, if you asked us to send an email with a few lines, and what I would have said in my email, or will in the future say, is that I have a great interest in the B and the E, which is what Baha'u'llah refers to most notably in the long obligatory prayer.
Right.
That he came to bind and knit together the B and the E, which from my first days as a Baha'i, declared Baha'i, fascinated me. Actually, from before that time. And which the person who helped me find this, Don Jensen Nobile, has helped me to understand a little bit about. And there are strong echoes of that in this line, because the letters that are close to God, the Ilian, and those which are not, would suggest to me the two aspects of B and E. B being the material, and E being the spiritual. And in the Bayan, it sounds as if they are treated unequally and separately, whereas Baha'u'llah's progression as a manifestation was to bind and knit them together into the greater unity. So that's my first take on all of that, which is, but that really caught my attention. So I thought I'd mention that.
Marvelous. Okay. Well, welcome to the class. I hope you stick around because the study of this book is endlessly rewarding. I wanted to tell you a little anecdote, or share this with you, is that apparently when Abdu'l-Baha was a young man and in Baghdad, during the years that they lived in Baghdad, he was so enamored of the Persian Bayán that he read nothing but the Persian Bayán, possibly for years. He was either reading the Persian Bayán, or he was horseback riding, or he was swimming. He loved those three things the most when he was in Baghdad. And somehow I think it's just such a wonderful thing for us to contemplate the master with his depth of wisdom, immersing himself in this particular book. And the more you get into it, I think the more you'll understand why, as a young man, he found it so fascinating and so compelling, such a compelling read. That being said, the letters B and E, the Guardian had a wonderful parallel in Arabic. And that Arabic parallel is the kaf and the noon, because this is what the original language says, that it is God who brings things into being through the manifestation. And this is through the kaf and the noon, because kaf and noon together makes kun, and kun means be. You see, it's the imperative form of to be. So he's very lucky with English that you can do that, B and E, because in lots of other languages, there's no parallel at all. But the original is kaf and noon. And the mysteries of the kaf and the noon, I think that we will come back to them over and over in this book. And then what I'm intending is, over the course of our study of the Persian Bayán, we're going to start linking themes that we find in the Persian Bayán to writings of Abdul-Baha and writings of Baha'u'llah that further clarify and expand upon the ideas that we find in Persian Bayán. And so really what will happen is that we're reading one book, and that book will open a library. And that library will then be the treasured possession of every person who's read the Persian Bayán. And that's one of the things that's really thrilling for me about having the opportunity to do this entire book with you, is for us all to have that opportunity. So welcome, and we have to make sure, let's make sure, John, right away, that we give my email address, and that we, for all the new people, the newcomers, that they receive the schedule of readings, that they have a link to where they can find the video of the previous presentation of last week, and any other sort of directions on how to negotiate what's on that website. But let's take care of those to in our beginning here, rather than let them possibly not get handled in the future. So I'm going to defer to John to give that sort of technical information to everybody who's new.
So the email for Peter Terry was posted here in the Zoom chat, and it's PE for Peter, PETER. So it's PETER for Peter, and then RY19@gmail.com. So it's Peter RY19@gmail.com. For all of you who are wondering, that is his email. You can email him and he will be available for you.
Yeah, you can also, another way to look at that is P.E. Terry.
Yes,
or
it's
Petery.
a combination of Peter and Terry in one word.
Exactly.
So
19.
aside from the blended email, everyone can on YouTube and Facebook view these videos as well. These videos are accessible on YouTube and a playlist that we've created. And they're also accessible on Facebook on the Baha'i Center of Clearwater page. Jeremiah has included them here in the Zoom chat for your convenience as well.
Very good. Now, have you already said this, that the list of readings that we're doing for each week And I just want to say a word about that because it'd be very easy for people to become confused. The reading that is listed on the day, on today, for example, is the reading that I'm encouraging you to do for next week. So we'll talk about it next week, you see, and rather than the reading that you needed to do for today. Because I wanted everybody to get a chance to look at this overview document first before we dive into the deep end of the pool. And there is no shallow swimming in this book. It's deep from the beginning. And by the way, the exordium to the Persian Bayán is found in the overview document. It's sort of like a preface. All right, see, Stephen Collins is asking, making a comment. Do you see that, John? It appeared to me for about 1 second and then it disappeared. But he was asking for something to actually go into
for all
the
of you who are wondering, yes, for all of you who are wondering, this is the homepage for clearwaterbahais.org. It is here on the URL, clearwaterbahais.org. And there are different tabs. Your educational resources, spiritual study courses. You'll find study of the Persian Bayán. So I have this listed for all of you now under educational course, under educational resources. Clicking on the drop down of spiritual study courses, you'll find a tab for study of the Persian Bayán. Jeremiah has created this page. Once you click on it, it has the introduction, which was our first Sunday session. It was held at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. And you have here the sign up for the Persian Bayán course. You have the title here. I'm going to open link the new tab just to show everybody. Of course, it downloads. When you click on
that's the document analysis. That's the document that Terry was talking about earlier. And the resources, additional resources can be found at the bottom of that if you scroll down, John. John, you have to scroll down at the bottom of the page.
So I've seen that page and I understand there's things there that are absolutely necessary for the class. But Peter was just talking about sort of the reading list, what are we supposed to do, and that day it's actually going to be
right. That's on the additional resources page, which links to it. And I actually have to update this because it doesn't take into account week 2. So I'll update week 2, and I'll probably do that tonight at some point.
Thank you.
So here you have some information for your viewing pleasure as well. So the specific items in question, these are the additional reading items. And Peter and Jeremiah, you can see not all of them are highlighted, but you can still click on them. So these are all the materials here. Videos and the material. So what was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
So, Steve, would it still be helpful to you if it was, if this information was sent to you in a link? I mean, in your email?
No, it could. It's always nice to have more than one reference of information, but I see where it's listed on the page. It was just like another page deeper than I was expecting to find it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea if we could send out an email to everybody with the course readings and maybe a link to the text itself for those who haven't already downloaded it.
So Jeremiah, when you have a chance.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll work on putting together emails for each of the weeks specifically that will go out once a week that will have all of this compiled in it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that being said, I can stop sharing my screen for now, I guess. To look at something more. Peter?
Well, I want to again invite those who have taken the time to read part or all of this long introductory survey to ask questions or bring up any comments that they may have. This kind of a study of a book, particularly a book that's well over 500 pages long, is not something that we do generally, most of us, after we go to college. You know, even in college, it's a fairly rare thing because they're constantly giving us little snippets of things to read rather than gigantic books. So this is probably going to be quite a challenge for all of us to remain focused and to not get overwhelmed. But you have a support network here, and I want to tell you that anybody who's doing this project with us, you have my email. You are welcome to email me at any time, and I will reply, and usually pretty quickly. And you may find that there are other members of the class that you also would like to discuss things with. And I think that we'll end up sharing our emails as we go along. So if there's somebody who would like to hold up their hand or otherwise indicate that they would like to say something, please go ahead.
There is a question from Don Jensen Noble. Don, if you would like to repeat what you wrote, I can read it for you, but
okay,
there
sure.
you go. Yeah.
Could you clarify the person intermediary distinction resulting in different wording, I should say, in the translation? In the paragraph on page 9, God erected his new creation by his order and placed it under the shadow of his order until he made it return to him in the person of him whom God must make manifest. As there is no doubt that God created the creature and made it return to him by the intermediary of him whom God shall make manifest. For he is powerful over all things.
Yes, well, Dawn, this is a theme that we're going to encounter so many times in the Persian Bayán, I've given up counting them. And the reason why we encounter them so often is because this was his way of pointing to Baha'u'llah without pointing to Baha'u'llah, you know? I mean, his major function, and he knew that, was to make a bridge between Islam and the Baha'i revelation. The Baha'i revelation was meant to be the revelation that was going to take us into a whole new cycle of existence as human beings. And there will be many, many references to him whom God shall make manifest in this text. And those references are very difficult to quantify because, as we know, Baha'u'llah has many facets to him. You know, in one facet, he's speaking a language that people can relate to. So obviously he's speaking human language, right? And in another of his facets, he's a manifestation of God like all other manifestations of God, because they're all one. And then in another aspect, he is the supreme manifestation who is inaugurating this new cycle. And they're all integral to his reality. And the Bayan, I mean, the Persian Bayán in particular, is preparing people to recognize the magnificent highest station, if you will, of Baha'u'llah, because it's the most difficult for people of any religion to really understand and to comprehend and to accept really profoundly. You know, we're all used to prophets. We're all used to human beings. We're all used to reading language. These are things that we're familiar with. And then you have somebody who is taking it to another level. And the Báb is preparing people. And he prepared, I think someday there will be many, many Baha'is who will study this document, the Persian Bayán, to understand how it was that the Báb was preparing the minds and the hearts of not only his followers, but if anybody would pick up the book, to prepare them for this greater revelation that was to follow him. And it's hard, honestly, when you know something about the extent of the Báb's writings, you realize that when Baha'u'llah calls him the king of the messengers, this is not an exaggeration. He is the king of the messengers. He revealed something like 500,000 verses in 6 years, you know, and I mean, just the speed of his revelation is discussed. And I think it's also in my my overview, my summary. It's just that how rapidly this revelation was coming out of him. So as you can see, I'm losing my capacity to talk about this theme because it's so powerful, it's so moving, and it's so central really to his link to Baha'u'llah. And we have to remember, it's so important that Baha'is understand every single time he says, him whom God shall make manifest, he's saying Baha'u'llah, right? That's who he's talking about. And if he talks about a cosmic shift in our understanding of what is possible in the world of creation, well, that's what Baha'u'llah is.
Thank you.
Delighted that you can join us.
Thank you, Don. And there are a few other questions that have been asked. I'm going to say in order. We have Samaya's question first, and then we'll follow it with Stephen Collins. So from Stephen Collins, we have, sorry, Samaya, page 18 from the thematic analysis. Could you please elaborate on the different paradise that 2, Báb 16? Samaya, if you'd like to unmute and explain your question further, or Peter, is it okay?
I mean, I'm reading on this page 18, and if Peter can clarify different paradise, there's story about paradise is that of God, and the second and next in rank is the paradise of the manifestation of God. What is this?
Ah. Well,
where are we going after this life?
Well, now, if you will all do this together, look at your left hand and look at your ring finger. I think it's your left hand, or is it your right hand? I'm not sure. But you look at your hand and you will see this ring, and it has a ring stone. And the ring stone is a symbol. And it's a symbol of cosmic reality. And this cosmic reality will be referred to over and over and over and over by the Báb and by Baha'u'llah and by Abdul Baha. And it's very revolutionary concept, actually, because human beings have been terribly confused about what is God, what is a manifestation, or a Buddha, or a Krishna, or a prophet. They don't know what's the difference here, and how are they connected, and how are human beings connected, so that we actually can benefit from the counsels that we receive from the manifestations. And this paradigm we will see over and over and over, and it differentiates radically between the world of God, which is inaccessible. Sometimes they use the expression hahut, or which means ipsity. It means in himself. In himself, God has a nature which is inaccessible to everyone, because we're all creatures of his, and we cannot understand our creator fundamentally. We can only understand through the manifestation. That's the way that the path for us. And then what's radical also about this the intermediary of the manifestation is clearly in the Bayan. You see the Báb explaining that the manifestations of God have been coming for a long time, and they're all manifestations. It's not like one is sort of a junior manifestation, another one is sort of a second grade one, and then there's a third grade one. No, it's really, they are one essence. They are one channel for guidance. And so when the new one comes, there's a segue. Is a segue from one to the other. By the way, I want to show you my youngest, who happens to be wanting to be with her papa. Yes, so we have this. So this is really what he's talking about. He's talking about the paradise of God, the paradise of Allah, is something we never go to, but it exists. It exists. And how do we know it exists? Because the manifestation told us it exists. And in fact, the manifestation also says that there's a paradise for the manifestation that we do not attain to, because we're not manifestations. We have our own paradise. And there's a wonderful expression that the Báb uses in his prayers very often. He says, heaven and earth and whatever lies between them. Which is, again, thank you, Baha'u'llah, and thank you, Báb, for making it so clear that there's always this intermediary which keeps us permanently connected to our unknowable essence. So we, in the most important way, we can know God. We can know God in a very intimate way, but it is through this channel of the manifestation. And this is a truth that people of all religions have experienced, but they haven't known how to talk about it and how to describe it, and how to oh, now I'm being told by my daughter that I need to stop talking and eat. But no, you go eat, and I will come eat with you later, okay? Here, feed the child, okay? All right, all right? No? All right. All right, so I think my daughter is a Bábí, because she doesn't take no for an answer. So did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
You're
It's a
welcome.
Bábí joke there.
And of course, whatever answer I give you is only part of an answer. And this is one of the joys of reading this book. You'll find that the Báb comes back to themes over and over again. And it's not because he forgot his place in, the revelation process, it's not because, it's because we don't understand things the first time. We understand things after things are repeated to us several times. This famous story of Mirza Abu Fazl, who said, I read the Kitab-i-Yagan 6 times with the eyes of reason, and then I read it in the eyes of faith. And that was the difference. When you read with the eyes of faith, and that's what we're doing. We're doing this because we're committed Baha'is, and to be approaching this book with our great love for Baha'u'llah and the Bab gives us opening to the meanings of the words that many other people would not arrive at.
Thank you so much. So there is a question from Stephen Collins. He has 2 points out of the second Vahed, ninth Bab, also known as, of course, the second unity and ninth gate. He has 1 question and 1 sharing. Stephen, thank you for your patience.
Sure.
And after,
hey, Peter. Oh, yeah.
One moment, Stephen.
Sure.
After Stephen, we have Kirk, who's going to be asking the next question.
Very good.
Hey, Peter. So it's actually a little bit out of Vahid 2, Bab 8 and 9. I had a question and a comment, an idea that sprang from it. The question is about this definition of purgatory that is presented. Can you hear me while you're walking? Yes, I guess you do. Previous to encountering this, and in general, what little I had with the exposure to the idea of purgatory was in Christian reference, and there was always a question whether it was a kind of evolving definition out of the blue, or if it had some actual basis somewhere. It seemed to be a derivative idea that heaven and hell was set and purgatory was an afterthought, at least in the versions that I've heard of. And then here, the Bab is defining purgatory in a particular way, and it's very useful to have a particular definition. But I'm wondering if there's a bridge idea between the Christian attitude and understanding of purgatory and the Bab's definition of purgatory that was maybe mentioned in Islam somehow, somewhere, that I didn't know about. I just wondered if there was a bridging idea, because in Christianity, what little I knew about it was that it seemed to be sort of an afterthought that theologians came up with. And in the Bábí revelation, it's very clearly defined and present. So is there a bridging point where it's brought in more? That's the question. You're muted right now.
Unmute. There I am, unmuted.
Very good.
So, wonderful question. I think we will get into a more involved discussion of that question when we actually read that text and we see the words, the actual words that the Bab is using. Because I maybe in order, for the sake of brevity, I've paraphrased a lot and summarized a great deal. And the Bab goes on and he phrases things in very particular ways. And so that's my first instinct would say, let's look at that one a little bit down the road when we're looking at the actual text. But my second response is, we have just begun the process of correlation and of what the Guardian called the reconciliation of the religions of the world. The Guardian says that this is one of the principal aims of the faith, is to reconcile the religions of the world. And Baha'is have just begun that process. And naturally so, we would have begun with the teachings of Baha'u'llah and especially the talks of abwáb, because abwáb goes into such detail with the Christian in mind. So that's not to say that we'll find easy, compact answers in any of the texts, but we are going to be creating those bridges. That's going to be our job, is to create this reconciliation. And we have vast resources to inspire us and to inform us, but it's our job. Because he's not coming back for 1,000 years. So we're the guys who have to do this work. Sorry, the guys and the ladies too. Maybe mostly the ladies this time around. So again, let's come back to that. And in the meantime, because I know that you're a terrific researcher, I'm encourage you to do a little digging. See if any Baha'i has written about purgatory. I don't know. I honestly don't know. If anybody had written about purgatory, it would have been Gary Matthews, maybe, or it would have been Udo Schaefer. More likely Udo Schaefer than anybody else.
Okay, I'll
But
look for
let's
that.
jump into that again when we come back. All right?
Should I go ahead with my second thing?
Yes, please.
This one's less of a question than a sort of wandering reflection. In Vahid 2, Bab 9, it talks also about, and I think in other places, about these letters of affirmation. And it reminded me of a previous investigation where I had tried to look for this reference and sort of examine the idea. And I came at it, I do a lot of work on history, as you know, and sometimes I'm asked by people to try to justify, or, why should we pay attention to history? Isn't that gone? I'm worried about the present. And one of the angles that I have thought of to try to explain this to people, especially to other Baha'is, is that we are part of a tree of relationships, that the analogy of a tree and a leaf and a twig is used in a variety of ways, and that implies linking, that we are linked in various ways. And the idea that I know my Baha'i story, I know who was there for me for my questions when things were puzzling out, what was going on, who was there with me with my investigations. The people who stood out in that process, we term sometimes spiritual parents. And then what leapt to my mind was recognizing that they had their own story, that these people who were there for me had their story, and who was there for them, and what were their circumstances, and that these people, by using that analogy, would be spiritual grandparents. And so on back, you can immediately extrapolate pretty quickly, but the tree has a starting point. And I was able to trace my spiritual tree back to who met Abdul Baha in 1912. I was lucky enough that the people intermediary were named in various places, and I was able to track them down. And I've used the term the tree of affirmation one time because I was aware it existed. But this letters of affirmation is a fresh encounter with that idea, I believe. I just wanted to share that.
So throughout this book, you will encounter two expressions over and over and over. One expression, the letters of affirmation. The other, the letters of negation. The letters of affirmation are those souls who either during this life or in the next life recognize the new manifestation and turn to him. The letters of negation are the people who turn away. Now, in a sense, your purgatory are the people who haven't made up their minds. And the Báb has something very, I thought charming to say about that. He says, the people who sit on the fence, they don't get the benefits of this world or the next world. I thought that was a marvelous way of putting it, because, if you choose this world and then at the end of your life, you say, oh, I really messed up, now I'm about to go to another world, please God, forgive me for all the nonsense I did. That's, Jesus talks about that too, about the prodigal son, who's been a bad boy, but when he recognizes the truth, when he comes back to his father, it's not a half measure. This is wholehearted, and this is something that we get from the Báb over and over again, is his understanding that when you make a decision, make the decision. Don't fuss around, Don't do it in half measures. Go all the way. And the other thing that is very interesting about his use of language is the letters of affirmation come from what? They come from the tree of life. The tree of life is the symbol of the manifestation. And that tree of life symbol has been part of so many different religious traditions. And, including the Christian and Jewish tradition of the very beginning of Genesis, where there's the tree of life. And then there's the tree of, the knowledge of good and evil. And that's where we got hung up on as human beings, as we thought we were somehow supernatural because we could make choices, except then, of course, we make the wrong choices a lot of the time. So that's where we foul up. And but again, this theme will be coming back so many times that by the time we're finished reading the book, we're going to have a very clear understanding of what this means and of the potential ramifications of this language. I was reminded of this years ago. I was talking about the station of people who are clearly very spiritually minded and have given themselves to the service of humanity. And the name Mother Teresa came up. And I remember at the time insisting that Mother Teresa couldn't be, of the same station as a Baha'i because she hadn't recognized Baha'u'llah. And I've come to realize that I was probably wrong about that, because our recognition of the manifestation has more to do with our actions than our words. And it may even have more to do with our unconscious than our conscious. The gift actually of recognizing a manifestation and being able to understand or study and learn his book is that we can make conscious what a lot of people are unconsciously doing. In other words, they're following the manifestation because they're receiving an impulse in their hearts or even in their minds, but they don't know what the origin of that is. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why you have this extraordinary passage in the Quran where Baha'u'llah says, don't judge anybody, because nobody knows what his own end is going to be. No, when we have these fixed ideas that some people are way off the line, they're never, true believers. Well, there are too many stories that show us that that's not the case, and we don't even know what happens in the next world. So how could we possibly, that wonderful phrase where he says the only one who knows this, what will happen to each one of our souls, is God. None of the rest of us know, and thank God for that. What it relieves us is, it relieves us so tremendously from the responsibility for living other people's lives. We just need to live our lives. So do we have someone else there?
Yes, we do. So we had a question next from Kirk. Kirk, would you like to unmute yourself?
Thank you, John. So, and just to slip in on your last point about not judging anyone, and this, of course, gets ahead of the Báb because Baha'u'llah comes after the Báb. But this is perhaps why Baha'u'llah emphasized the major and minor plans of God, because people in the major plan are unconscious of the spiritual forces moving them that people in the minor plan, Baha'is, close seekers, are supposed to understand. So that may be that addition to understanding that Baha'u'llah provides may help to clarify that whole matter. But back to the Bayan. So I was following up what Dawn was talking about when I referred to the passage that she was looking at. Maybe these are structural questions that might be helpful for us to understand your summary. Most of those paragraphs there in that portion in the preludium have little quotation marks, which indicates you're quoting from the Bayan, but maybe you're not, because the wording may not be exact. Is that, how are we to interpret those quotation marks at the beginning of each one of those pieces? And you're muted.
Yeah. So the quotations anything that's in quotation marks is my rough translation at the time that I wrote that document, which most of it was in 1977. And then it was revised in 2015. This is what we're reading here is a fresh translation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we may find the same passages translated differently. It may be that the particular language that's used evokes a very different understanding of what's being depicted by the Báb. But one of the characteristics of this book that is so, I would say, encouraging to us is that the Báb doesn't ever leave a theme alone. He comes back to it over and over. It's like a weaving a rug or weaving something else where they're lines that are being woven together and they keep appearing in another place, and sometimes with different language, sometimes with the same language. And so I wouldn't be concerned if you find that something is impenetrable, okay, in a particular place, because undoubtedly you will encounter it again and you'll go, oh, that's what it meant, right? And probably what happened was the translator also went, oh, that's what he meant, because translators are just human beings, and they're trying their best to convey what another language is how it's being worded in a different language.
Well, I don't want to nitpick, therefore. But this might be a good time to look at back to that piece in the preludium on page 10, which Dawn pointed out. And in that short piece, it says at one point, it's in the person of him whom God must make manifest. It's in italics. Then in the next line, it's him whom God shall make manifest. And so the key word I'm focusing on, the shift of the word, is must to shall. So the question is, how interchangeable? I mean, you are the translator, so you would know. Is there an emphasis on must here that is different from the shall?
Yes, so I can explain that. The term this is an Arabic term, and the Arabic term is, of course, wherever it appears in the original Persian Bayán, it's the same words. The Guardian translated it principally by saying him whom God shall make manifest as a future form. The Nicolas in French called it celui que Dieu devrait manifester. So devrait in French could be must. It could also mean shall, will. And it kind of depends on the context, but it's not really important. because the actual Arabic is the same in every single instance in the original text. And that has been translated by the Guardian, and I think his translation is better than mine. Okay, if I can put it that way. And I think also his translation is of that particular term is more clear than Nicolas was. Because, you know, you have to remember Nicolas was a Bábí to his dying day. But Nicolas did not have any particular fondness for the Baha'is until very late in his life. Shortly before he died, he received a copy of the Dawnbreakers, and I've translated the letter that he wrote to a Baha'i. He was so moved by reading the Dawnbreakers. It was clear to me that he had tears in his eyes as he was writing the letter, because it was the first time that he was sure that not only do the Baha'is get it, not only do they really understand who the Bab is, but the Bab is going to be carried forward by a community of believers for who knows how far into the future, because of the Baha'is. Because he knew that at that point that the Azalis were done. They had all dispersed. They had returned to Islam in most cases. They had proven themselves to be pretty reprehensible characters. And so if it had been left to the Azalis, if it had to the followers of Mirza Yahya, the Bábí religion was done. It was finished. And the Bábís was also going to go, was going to disappear. But then he saw that because the Guardian had translated this book and insisted the Baha'is needed to read it, and the major theme, after all, of this book is the Bab. So I just wanted to bring that up. And as a Bábí, he was not looking for him whom God shall make manifest in any time soon. He had come to a literal understanding of two passages that are found in the Persian Bayán. One which says that him whom God shall make manifest, and it associates it with a particular word that has been deconstructed using abjad, using the numerological system that the Persians used, that other Muslims used. And one number that comes up is 1500, and the other one is 2001. And so this concept of many of the Azalis was him whom God shall make manifest is not coming for a very, very long time. Whereas, as we know, the Bab actually predicted that him whom God shall make manifest will appear within 9 years. And in other passages, he says 19 years. And of course, Baha'u'llah appeared both in 9 years and in 19. Because it was in 9 years that he had this vision of the maiden, the maiden of heaven, and that the full force of knowing himself as a manifestation came to him when he was sincere child. And then at 19 years is when he went to the Garden of Rizwan and revealed himself as him whom God shall make manifest to a small number of people. So those were fulfilled, and it came so soon after, which once you've read this book, in the process of reading this book, you'll realize there's no possibility that the Bab is referring to a manifestation who's going to occur, who's not going to come for 1500 or 2000 years. The intensity of his language about this is that he's going to say which one of my teachings are going to be implemented. Well, how would that happen? Are we going to wait for 1500 years to figure out whether we should follow your laws? No, that's kind of ridiculous as a thought. So that's my my immediate take on this. And I think one of the things that I wanted to suggest is that we keep ourselves in a state of openness and readiness for anything in reading this book. Because somebody asked me if I would define for everybody what the primal will is. And I thought, no, I don't want to define what the primal will is. I want you to find out what the primal will is. And because I know my own investigation of these writings has been filled with joy of discovery that nobody taught me. It didn't come from somebody else. It came from inside of me. I am being summoned by my wife and by my cell phone, because I'm talking to you from a cell phone from the Hotel Holbrook in Grass Valley, California. And my reserve is now at 1%. So I think very soon it's going to die.
Yes, it will. Very soon. 5 minutes, maybe one.
So I think I'm going to say, if you're not sure which reading to do for next week, go and peruse the website. And I wish you well in that reading. I look very much forward to reading all of that material myself. And we will continue our conversation in 7 days.
Aloha.
Okay. Aloha,
Happy Wisdom,
everybody.
I mean, it's been
Thank
over.
you so much for participating, and the adventure has just begun.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, Peter. Thank you so much. So as everyone has heard, we're about done for today. We will have a session on this coming Wednesday, and that will be, because today is Wednesday, May 4th, it will be Wednesday, May 11th. And on that session, we are expecting to go over the beginning pages of the Bayan, and we are all looking forward to covering this material and getting through it. If there are more questions, please, the email that Peter had shared, I will again repeat the email. It is peterry19@gmail.com or peterry19@gmail.com. I don't know what you call it when you combine two words where they overlap, but that's what Peter did with his email. So
I think it's called an acrostic. I believe they used to make puzzles with that.
An acrostic.
An acrostic. I remember those. But anyway.
Acrostic. That it's nice.
An acrostic. I don't know why they called it that. I'm completely in the dark about. But I think that way the words overlap each other, and yet yes. But anyway, one thing you might want to recommend to Peter is one of these little devices. It's a little portable battery device. It's a charger. They're very nice. They're $30, and they're very thin and you can fit in your pocket. And it would save him from his situation that he was just in, where he was just going to die. It would keep him going. So, but anyway, I just thought in case you can mention that to him.
Yes, I'm learning with you as we're going along, and that's the beautiful part of it. Thank you so much for that. Yes,
it's very small. They're easily purchased, and they have different connections for Apple phones and for different little connections. So they're very nice. Some of them built-in cords, so you don't have to fiddle with cords and so forth. So anyway. I've used them for years, and they've saved me on many, many, many occasions when I was in a bad situation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's important, as you all know, yes, that was important. That's a good solution to the battery issue. But as a matter of fixing what we need to do for next week, we thank you all. If you have questions about getting to the website, we really want to make sure if there's difficulties that we can help resolve them for a website. on clearwaterbahais.org. Please let us know. We heard your feedback today, and Jeremiah is going to be getting to work on implementing those changes. There's, of course, the email he sent out, which was very beautiful, but of course can, be changed according to what Peter and Stephen had spoken about. We will try to work on that. And lastly, there's the references. Again, what you had read in questions. If you hadn't gotten answers to your questions, please send it to that email. I'll repeat one more time and then close out for tonight. The email again is Peter, R-Y, Peterry, 19 at gmail.com. Without much further ado, we thank you all for joining, and we look forward to see you next week. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful